Hello and welcome to Classic Bike Races with me, David Standard. I'm going to be doing a series of what I consider to be the greatest bike races of all time. If there's any you'd like me to cover, please leave them in the comments. So today we're going to be looking at Liège Bastogne Liège in 1980, one of the greatest races ever. Liège Bastogne Liège is one of the monuments, one of the classic races. But before we start on the race itself, let's just talk about what we mean by monument race. There are 5 in total, starting in March with the Milan-San Remo, then over to Belgium, where we've got the cobbled classics of the Paris-Roubaix and Tour of Flanders, or Ronde van Vlaanderen for our Dutch speakers. Then the Liège-Bastogne Liège, one of the Ardennes classic. And then into autumn for the final monument, which is the Race of the Falling Leaves, the Il Lombardier, all of the one-day classics, which make up the monuments. So, back to 1980, Liège-Bastogne Liège. Held on the 20th of April, 1980. The story of this race is how Bernard Hinault became a living legend. Let's start with our hero. Let's talk about Bernard Hinault. So Hinault, the proud young Breton, aged 25 at the time, he'd already won the Tour de France. He'd won the Champs-Élysées stage of the Tour de France wearing yellow after being away in a two-man break with Zoetemelk. This was the great, not just French hope, but the French master already at such a young age. He'd go on to win 5 Tour de France's to equal Eddy Merckx's record. He was the last Frenchman to ever win the Tour de France in 1985. Not only was he a great racer, but he was a hell of a fighter. He was tough and he would take no nonsense. And that carried on for when he was working with the Tour de France. As we can see, he took no nonsense, and that's why they call him the Badger. Back to the race. It's supposed to be spring in Belgium, but the temperature is hovering around 0. It's freezing as the peloton rolls out of Liège. It starts to snow. Not just light flurries, it's a full blizzard. Within the first hour, 60 riders have abandoned. By 70 kilometres, 110 of the 174 starters are done. They're climbing off their bikes. Now you need to remember, Hinault's 1980 season had not started well. He'd abandoned the small stage race by Nice. The week before, he'd had bronchitis and had to retire out of Gent-Wevelgem. And the weather is just getting worse. And puts on a red balaclava that looks like his mum knitted it for him. To be honest, it's a piece of headgear that only he can really get away with, and no one's going to know what to say. At Vielsalm, he tells Cyril Guimard, his director sportif, if it's still snowing, I'm done. But at Bastogne, the sun comes through. Hinault says later that's perhaps what saved him, and he stayed in the race. When asked about what clothing they had or what equipment they had, he just says not much, just a rain jacket. We didn't have technical clothing, just some wool gloves, a cap, 2 or 3 wool jerseys under the rain jacket. That was it. There was no gabber in those days. At the Côte de Stockholm, 2 Belgians, Rudy Pevenage and Ludo Peters, are off the front with a 2-minute lead. Then Guimard draws alongside Hinault and says take off the jacket. The real racing is about to start. Hinault would say, my cape was warm, but I took it off. I decided the only thing to do was ride as hard as I could to keep myself warm. At the climb of the Haute-Levée, with 80 kilometres to go, he attacks. He catches the leaders, rides through them and disappears into the snowstorm alone. He's still got 80 kilometres to go, and he's going it alone in a snowstorm. Now, to go solo with 80 kilometres to go in good conditions is audacious. Doing it in a blizzard is legend. That's the mind of a champion, overriding every survival instinct, screaming at him to stop. Even the motorbike outriders and cars are finding it difficult, including this chap and his rather fine Mustang. Behind him, what's left of the peloton tries to respond, but Hinault is riding into legend. His lead just keeps growing, 1 minute, 2 minutes, as he goes over La Redoute and enters Liège. The balaclava's gone, the weather's brighter, that cobalt steel sky in the background, those snow clouds that tried to beat him. The Badger has won. The chasers arrive into Liège, kissed by that sunshine, but looking like the brave men who'd emerged from those same Ardennes forests only 35 years earlier. Hennie Kuiper, Ronnie Klaus, Fons de Wolf, Pierre Bazot, and Ludo Peters chase him to no avail. The crowds line the streets to welcome the hardest man in cycling. He adjusts his toe straps with fingers he can't feel, freeing feet frozen beyond sensation. He crosses the line, too exhausted to raise his arms. 2 fingers, the right index and middle finger, will never feel again. Permanent frostbite. The price of immortality. The sprint for second begins 9 minutes and 24 seconds behind Hinault. Kuiper takes second with Ronnie Klaus third, enveloped by photographers. This is before health and safety, as you can see. But all 21 who finished that day are winners. Today wasn't about the podium, it was about survival. And there's Hinault after the race being interviewed, calm, assured. Years later he reflected, when I look back on that victory today, I know I really pulled a great exploit. But let me tell you, in the heat of the moment, I really suffered. Chapeau, Bernard, the Badger, silencing his critics in the only way he knew how, by attacking when everyone else was merely surviving. That's not a bike race, that's legend. Join me again for the next classic bike race. For now, chapeau.